Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
My name is Luke Thomas, and I'm a very grateful alcoholic. I want to thank Ed for that introduction, because I didn't actually remember doing anything like that, but I thought that's an old throwback, maybe one of my defects of character. You know, I was really going to impress him with if I can't convince him, I'm going to confuse him, you know, with the facts. And I never dreamed that I would put him under such pressure like that. I was very grateful to him, though, that he arranged the pairings, that he gave me one of the best players as my doubles partner, and we won the tournament, so I was very grateful to him on that. He did a good job. And then this year he wouldn't let me play with that other fella that I played with. He said, no, we don't want you coming back here and trying to win this tournament 2 years in a row. And so I had the fortune of playing with him, and it was, he's a good player. I really enjoyed it, I tell you. We unfortunately ran into a couple from Newport Beach that were pretty good, though, and they kind of gave us a bad time, but so it was a lot of fun. I wanted to congratulate the birthday people, Oliver and Aurelie, for their birthdays, and I was thinking, with such a large group here, my Lord, you must have over 150-something people here. And I was thinking of all the birthdays that they would probably have tonight, or coming up, or whatever. And I was thinking, too, that how grateful Aurelie was about her sobriety. And that's the way I feel. When I say I'm a grateful alcoholic, I almost shuddered when I heard that the first time, because I remember my reaction was violent when somebody said they were grateful. I said, how in the hell can you be grateful to be an alcoholic when you have to stop all that marvelous boozing and all that wonderful martinis and those great scotch and sodas and those marvelous cold beers on a hot day and that beautiful Chianti wine with Italian dinners and all that marvelous French wine with French meals and all that beautiful, beautiful stuff. How can you say that you're a grateful alcoholic? You have to give that all up. And I was violent and furious and mad. And it must have been about 9 months later that it dawned on me that I had forgotten all about the 502s, all the drunk times, all the times when I should have gotten 502s and came home in a blackout, taking about 5 hours to drive a distance of 5 miles and getting lost and never knowing where I was, and the sick times that I had to go to the doctor, and all the hangovers and the blackouts. And all of a sudden it began to dawn on me that how come I remembered all the things that I thought I was going to miss rather than remembered all the things that had happened to me. I didn't want to remember the facts. I wanted to remember all those things, like, if I go to Paris, how am I going to enjoy all those beautiful French people and have that marvelous wine and those dinners and everything like that? And this friend of mine had gone over there, and he came back and he said, it's fabulous. They serve a different wine with 5-course dinners, and it's fabulous. And I thought, geez, I don't want to miss that. I thought about the champagne, you know, on New Year's Eve, and I thought about all those things. What am I going to do on those times? Fortunately, I began to get down to the facts of the situation was that I couldn't stand the kind of a person I had become. I talked about 502s, and I had 7. Now, a step 2 is about the insanity step. And that qualifies me right there, because you'd think, normally speaking, that if one had one 502, you'd think, well, I got a problem. If you had 2, you'd think, well, there must be suspect here information for me. And if you had 3, you'd say, well, you better do something about it. And I said, no, I'm a little bit smarter than the cops are. I've got a little more going for me. I can figure things out, and I can get away with it. And so then I got number 4, and then I finally said number 5, I better leave the state. And so I went back on a sabbatical. I like to call it sabbatical because that means it has a nice word to it, you know, sabbatical. You know, you're going somewhere and studying something so you can learn something rather than just geographical didn't fit in. And so I wound up in Aspen, Colorado. Now, to anybody who's ever been to Aspen, Colorado, and they had a picture, you know, a series on about Aspen, I identified with the courthouse because I was in the courthouse there, in the jail of the courthouse, twice with 502s in Aspen, Colorado. And believe me, that's damn hard to get because they only have one cop there, and they have one guy who helps the cop off when it gets a little hectic there, and they have one sheriff, and that's all they have. And they really don't give a damn what you do in that town. Is it just don't get in your car and cause too much commotion. You can drink all you want, you can fall down in the gutter, you can get as drunk as you want, you can pass out, you can shoot off guns, you can do anything you want. You can even kill people there. But just don't get in your car when you're drinking and drive around and cause too much commotion. And I got 2 502s while I was there in Aspen, Colorado, and that ain't easy. And I didn't realize that I was carrying myself to this place. I loved Aspen, Colorado, because I found that Shangri-La. I said, I found my Shangri-La now because I can do anything I want here, and there's nobody around to put pressure on me. All my life, I had always had the pressures of wherever I was, plus the people and the surrounding and the community and my family and all my relatives and all the people I knew, was always pressure of saying, this is what you should do. This is what you should act. This is how you should talk. And all my life I had been brought up that way to do according to what I was told I should do because that's what was expected of me. So when I got to Aspen, I said, my God, this is fabulous. Nobody cares here what you do. This is the greatest thing that ever happened. And I was having a ball, and I paid for it with 2 502s. And I remember at the time, one of them was because one of the miners there, who I was buddy with, said, I can't walk home tonight. It's 40 below zero, and when it's 40 below zero in Aspen, you can't dare stay out more than a half hour because you're in trouble. No matter how warm you try and dress, you better not stay out more than a half hour. So he said, would you give me a ride home, Luke? And I said, sure. So I was going back all the back roads to take him home, and I had one spot that I had to cross the highway. And just as I crossed the highway, wouldn't you know that there came the assistant, the guy that worked with the cop there, was driving down the street, and he saw me cross the street there, and he turned up and followed me and stopped me and hauled me off to jail. And they ran a report on me in California and found out I had had 5 priors. And so there he said, okay, now you get another 502 and a fine and the whole thing. And don't ever get in that car again. And so I parked the car for 6 months and didn't get into it. And then one night, I thought one of the guys had flown in a big group of directors there for the foundation there in Aspen, and we got to talking about planes, and he didn't have a ride back to the airfield. And so I said very magnanimously, well, I have my car outside here. I'd be glad to drive you down to the airport, you know. We want to make sure that all these people, you know, are taken care of well. And he said, fine. And so I read there, and I had one spot I had to cross the highway in order to get to the airport. And I figured, this guy is not good bound. This is Sunday afternoon, and he's never around on Sunday afternoon, and it's around 3 o'clock, 3:12. And I thought, he's never in this time around there, so I know I can cross that highway at that particular time, and he won't see me. And so I deliberately went the back way, showing the guy I was giving him a little tour of the town, you know, that he hadn't seen. And I crossed the highway at that one little point, and here comes the cop down the street, and he said, and stopped me, and he said, you know, I told you never to get in that car again. And away I went to the jail again. And, you know, looking back on this, I like to bring somebody up to the newcomers. I didn't realize this at the time, but you see, I'm a great believer in the fact that my higher power said there's one thing I can't stand, and that's jail time. And he planned this whole thing because he made darn sure I was going to get here to this program. And he timed it beautifully. Way down the line, when I tried to get out from under the first one and the second and the third, and I kept rationalizing it and putting it away, he kept saying, okay, buddy, I'll show you what it's like. And then he's happening, all these things happening to me and happening to me and happening to me. And when I finally got my last one, I had been away for 2 years, and I came back to Los Angeles. And I had some prior 502s facing me, and I got into town. I was gone 2 years to the date, which is another one of his little plannings that I thought was fantastic. I left on June the 12th, 1960, and I returned on June the 13th or 14th, 1962. Now that's pretty damn unusual. And I hadn't been here 15 days, and I picked up another 502. And that ain't easy. And this one was a real humdinger. So I hit a parked car, and the guy ran out and said, you've damaged my automobile, you know, and took the keys away and called the cops, you know, and I was really in trouble. And here I had these priors, you know, ahead of me. But he wanted to make sure that I got the message. And I was gradually beginning to get the message. And so I got out of bail, and I came home that night, and I walked into the apartment. And I remember I felt so low. I felt so discouraged and so despondent. And I cried out to my higher power. I said, I can't stand it any longer. It's just too much. I can't stand what I've become. I can't stand the kind of a person who keeps winding up in these places. I mean, whatever happened to the guy who thought had something on the ball? Whatever happened to the guy who thought he could get out there and really cope and do a good job of whatever he thought he was good at? And you're the biggest disappointment I've ever had. Well, I can't stand it. And I cried out to my higher power. I said, God, please help me. I just can't stand it any longer. And I walked over there and in my apartment, and the phone rang. And it was my brother-in-law from San Francisco. He lives up near Oakland, Lafayette. And he never calls me. I never called him. I never told him about the trouble I was in. I was just one of those things. We were just a mutual, I did my thing and I got out of my own troubles, and I'd been brought that up that way all my life. And he called up and he says, I understand you're having a little problem. Nice way of putting it. And I said, yes, that's right. And he said, have you decided on what you're going to do? And my usual way of handling my affairs was to go to people like Jerry Giesler, you know, and say, look, here's the whole bale of wax. You just get me out of trouble, you know. And I paid off every time. I was brought up that way. When you want to get out of trouble, man, you pay off. And I had paid off many times to attorneys where I said, I don't want to go to court. And he'd say, send me $1,000 and I'll make sure we'll get you off the court calendar. And that's the way I got off the court calendar. And so when my last 502, the judge says he couldn't stand it reading all this report about all these times I'd been stopped, and he said, and no disposition, you know, court or fine, no disposition, because I'd paid off all the time to the attorney who paid off to the court. I don't want to give you any guys any ideas about how to do this, but in case you're cunning, baffling, and powerful in thinking about it, but it does happen. And I was a great one that I had learned where I grew up that was the way you did it. And so I tried it again, and I had to do 90 days up in the Los Angeles County Rehabilitation place up in Saugus. During the time I was there in Saugus, it was like he was like my higher power was taking me, and I did you ever see one of these pictures where they were taking steel and they put it into the fire and they bring it out and they start hammering it, you know, they bring it out there and it's red hot and they get that hammer and they just hammer the hell out of that steel, you know, until they get it shaped up to where it is, and then they stick it back in the fire and it gets red hot again, and then they pull it out and they start hammering the hell out of it, you know. They used to make swords that way. And I was thinking about Damascus steel, you know, which was supposed to be the greatest type of steel that you make swords out of, and hammering and hammering and hammering. And I figured that's what my higher power was doing to me. Because when I was doing that 90 days, I got to the point where I would go to any lengths. I never want to come back here again as long as I live. I don't care what I have to do. Never do I want to come back here again and go through the degradation and the humiliation and being treated like I was treated up there. And it was really a country club. It really was a country club. They gave you more food that you could eat. They gave you fresh clothing every day. You had a nice bed to sleep in. And you worked out in the gardens because they had a lot of landscaping going on, and it was a nice place. But I couldn't stand it. I just couldn't stand it. And that's when he was tempering me. So when I got out of there and I came back and I got on the program. I had got on the program before I went there. So while I was in Saugus, I was going to meetings every time they had a meeting up there. And I remember that I used to sit there in the front row because I still had defects of character that I wanted to impress people. I still had this thing is that if I'm going to be noticed about what I'm going to do, I'm going to be the first one in there, and I'm going to sign up my name on the line first, and I'm going to sit in the front row, and I'm going to watch everybody walk in, and then I'm going to make darn sure that they saw my name at the top of the list because that guy's really on the ball, you know, and that's the way to impress people. And so I said, I'm going to do all these things. I can't stand it, but I'm going to do it. And then I heard that if I got in there and did my bit, well, I'd get a little good time off, you know. And so I thought, Jesus, for that I'll do anything. So I got off a little early. And I came out of there and I came to the program. I came into the program with a hostile attitude because I don't think that's unusual. I don't think there's anybody in the world that walks into this program of Alcoholics Anonymous and says, oh, joy. I just couldn't wait until I got here. It's the most exciting thing that's ever happened to me. I don't think anybody ever walked in that way. God knows I didn't. I walked in here hostile. I didn't show it on my outside because I was trained, as I said, in that old school of you never show your emotions on the outside. You never show how you feel. You always portray the person who's cool, calm, and collected and in control of every bit of your emotions and how you act and everything else. I was brought and trained in that. And so I came in here and I was the glad hander and I shook hands and I stuck out my hand when they told me I had to stick out my hand and shake hands with the owner. And I remember I'd only been on the program 28 days and people were saying, you've been around here 5 years, haven't you? No, not exactly. Boy, I got him again. I kept my mouth shut and looked very wise, nodded my head, very, thinking pensively. That's right. Mm-hmm. Gee, you look like you've been around here for a long time because I wasn't acting. I scanned all the newcomers on how they were acting. I said, that's not for me, And I watched all the old timers on how they act, and so I followed them around and started acting like they did, And pretty soon, it was working. And I thought, well, since I'm a fast study, I can memorize very quickly. I'll give this shot about 90 days, maybe 6 months. And during that time, I'll get a real good fast look at this whole program, and then at the end of 6 months, I'll splitsville, because I know that I'll be able to learn everything there is to learn on this program. If I can't learn it in 30 days, there's something wrong with me. I used to pride myself I could do it in a week, but I thought I'll give myself 30 days. And if I can't do it in that time, I'll say 6 months. That's plenty of time. And you know, my higher power has got a marvelous sense of humor. Everybody has to picture in their own mind. I was told this because they said you can have your own higher power, and I said, you're kidding. You mean I don't have to accept anybody else's? No, nobody else's. You've got your own. Whatever you think your higher power is, that's your higher power. You don't have to. I said, all my life I was told I had to accept what the Congregational Church told me, what the Baptist Church told me, what the Methodist Church told me, what the Catholic Church told me. I wasn't a Catholic, but I married a Catholic, and so I heard all about the Catholics and how they said it had to be done. Those were all the higher powers I'd heard that I had to accept, and I had to accept it in the way they told me it was. And they said, no, you have your own. Well, I started meditating about that, and all of a sudden the picture came to me. My higher power is this kind of a guy. He sits up there, and he's a big man, and he's robust, and he's healthy and strong, and he's got a nice big stomach, because that means he eats well, and I got a nice big stomach, and he laughs a lot, and every time he chuckles and laughs, why his tummy bounces in and out, and he just laughs and chuckles at me and says, oh, there's that kid down there again. Man, I'm telling you, I have more problems with him than I've ever seen before. And he sits there and laughs at him because I'm always playing little games with him. I was always playing little games with him. How can I get on his good side? That he'll get me to know that I'm in there really giving my best and not realizing that he also knows exactly what I'm thinking all the time. I couldn't come up with that. I always came up with that he's going to evaluate me on how I act, not what I say. And how does he read my mind? I had to come to the conclusion he did read my mind, because he laughed like hell at me because some of the things I did, I couldn't get away with. So after my first 9 months, I came to the part which I think is the hardest part in the program. I had admitted I was an alcoholic, and I held up my hand. I was an alcoholic, and I was false on that because I thought, well, I'm going to go along with the act. You know, everybody else is doing it, and I don't want to be looked at like, what's wrong with you? Are you a visitor? And I was for the first 30 days because I said, I'm a visitor here. I just want to come in here and see what you people are doing first. And if I like it, maybe I'll stay, because I don't really think I'm an alcoholic. And so at the end of 30 days, and I didn't want to be a newcomer, but stood up and said, I'm a newcomer for 30 days. It's not for me. I won't do that. So after the 30 days was up, why, then I held up my hand and said, yes, I admit I'm an alcoholic, because I figured that was the thing to do. By the time 9 months had gone by, I knew I was an alcoholic. But I couldn't accept it. And to me, the hardest part in this program when you're new is to accept the fact that you're an alcoholic. Admittance and acceptance. And acceptance means without any reservation at all. Any reservation at all. It's very important. Now, I had 2 reservations. I said, well, I don't mind accepting the fact that I'm an alcoholic, but if one of my friends calls me up and says, I have a yacht down at Newport, and I'd like to take you out on that yacht, and that always had a commendation with me, a yacht, phew, that just turned me on, you know. I love that word. And we'll go out on that yacht, and about 5 o'clock in the afternoon we'll stop, and we'll have a libation. I love that word, libation. And I said, and I drink. I drink. Because I love the water, and I love yachts, and I love people who are on the boats. And, and I love to stop at 5 o'clock and have a libation. That's the reward for all that hard work during all that time out on the water. And I got to laughing because I didn't know anybody that owned a yacht. What the hell am I talking about? And I got to laughing. Boy, you really dream up some of the best excuses I've ever heard in my life. What do you mean this big deal about a yacht? How many people do you know that got yachts? That's right, you don't. Okay, let's knock that one out. The second one was, if I ran into Lana Turner or Ava Gardner, and you see how that dates me, and she said, come on up to my apartment and we'll have some martinis and we drink together, we play together. And I said, I drink. I drink. And I got to laughing because I thought, boy, that's the best one I ever heard. I was doing 9 meetings a week. I was going out in coffee clutches after every meeting. I was doing 2 on Thursday and 2 on Sunday. And I was going during the time I was looking for a job. I was also going over to the fellowship clubs there at noontime and going to meetings then and doing all these things. You silly son of a bitch, you don't know any Lana Turners. What the hell are you worried about that for? Let's get with this thing. Stop all this trying to find those escape clauses that you're always searching for and looking for. You're always looking for that out clause. I was a master at finding an out clause on anything. Let's just get rid of all those things and let's say, okay, buddy, let's accept it all the way down without any reservations. And that's what happened to me. And I tell you that when you do that, all of a sudden I got this feeling of peace that came over me, that I had stopped fighting at last. And it's the most beautiful, wonderful feeling you can have in yourself, because your whole, I don't like to say psyche, but your whole inside gut feeling is that it becomes warm. Something happens within you when you stop fighting along the line. That's just the beginning, because from there on in, there are going to be lots of times that I had to do the same thing, the surrender step. I was working very hard because I looked around and I thought, well, I don't know whether I know all my departments are under new management, and I bought that idea. I said, I'm bankrupt in all departments, I'll accept that. And I'm going to put everything under new management, I accept that. And so on the physical department, I'll put myself physically in good condition. I'll start exercising, and I'll put my body in shape and get it back to where the body feels like it's back in good condition, and good physical health makes you feel good. And when you feel good physically, it also helps your thinking, because that's important too. And mentally, I'll work real hard on going to all the discussion groups where they pose these ideas about different things and discuss these ideas and learn all these new ideas about how they discuss things. I'll go to Bible study groups because I don't know anything about the Bible, and I think maybe I ought to learn something about it. But I'll go there and I'll listen to those discussions. I'll read everything I can on those subjects that I can get hold of. The people say to me, read this book, read that book. I'll do all those things to get myself in shape. I'll put everything I know in all my departments under new management, and I'll just work like a son of a gun and get these things all together. And that was fine, except the 2 departments that I didn't know what to do anything about. And one was the spiritual department, and one is the emotional department. And I didn't know what to do about my emotional department, because I accepted the fact that I'm an emotional basket case, and I'm emotionally immature, and I'm emotionally all those things that they told me I was. I said, I'll accept those things, but I don't know what to do about it, and I don't know how to do anything about it. So I'll just have to turn it over to my higher power and say, well, when you get ready for me to do something, you'll do it. By this time, I'm having a hell of a lot of confidence in him, and he knows a hell of a lot more about what I'm supposed to do than I do. And he gives me a little warnings every once in a while. He jogged me, and he was like I remember when I was a kid. You'd walk up to somebody and you hit him on the shoulder like that, and you say, "Hi, buddy, how are you?" And the guy would jump up and say, "Oh, I'm fine. How are you?" Well, that's what my higher power was doing to me. Every once in a while, he'd walk up and he'd hit me on the shoulder. Yeah, what did I do? Well, you aren't paying attention, And I got the message, but I'm slow though. I don't like to believe that I got the message, and I'd say, well, I heard you, but I don't know what you're talking about, and so I kind of delay it for a while, and then he'd hit me again the second time, and I think, well, that hurt, but I don't know what to do about it, and then he hit me the third time, and I said, all right, I'll do it, whatever you want, I'll do it, because I knew he's got my attention now, and this happened on many times. So I thought, well, I don't know what to do about the spiritual department. So I went to a guy I admired very much on the program at that time. He's not with us anymore. And I asked him, I said, Howard, how do you get spiritual sobriety? That's a hell of a question. You newcomers want to put somebody on sometime. Just walk up to an old-timer and say, how do you get spiritual sobriety? It's a hell of a question. And he said, let me ask you a question, Luke. Do you have any spiritual sobriety? And I said, yes. He said, you have spiritual sobriety when I ask you the question. At that moment, when I ask you the question, you say, yes, I have spiritual sobriety. But how about all the times when you're bitching about you're not getting a job? How about the times you're bitching about nobody's doing the things that you want on your resume? How about the times that you're bitching about the traffic and the way people drive? How about the times that you're just bitching, period? Where's all that beautiful spiritual sobriety you're talking about when you're bitching all the time? Oh, I see what you mean. Well, I know, but how do I get it? And he said, the answer is like the guy that said, how do you make Carnegie Hall? You practice, baby. You practice. If you want to make Carnegie Hall, you practice like hell all the time. And if you want to get spiritual sobriety, you practice all the time. And I mean constantly, all the time. So I thought, well, I don't know what the hell he's talking about, but I'll try it. And so I got the book on the power of prayer, and I read that, and I didn't get anything out of it except that you have to do a lot of praying. And I said, well, I don't know how to pray. And I really didn't. Because I never could accept what anybody else said, this is the way you do something. And then they'd give you a prayer, and I said, to hell with that. I don't understand what you're talking about. That to me is somebody else wrote that prayer and says that's the way to do it, and that's not me. I can't do it that way. And so finally I found out after much trial and error that it's an inside job, baby. You gotta work out your own way of doing your own praying. And let's find out how you do that. And so I went back to the time, I got to thinking about the time that all my life I'd had a boss. When I was a young kid, my mother was my boss. When I went to school, my teachers were my boss. They were always telling me what to do. When I got into 13, 14 young manhood, my father became my boss. He says, I'm going to take over his training now, and I'm going to teach him from now on. He's mine. And so until I was from about 13 to 18, my father was my boss. And he was telling me to do. And then I got a job, and I had a boss there. And they were always telling me what I had to do, and I had to learn to do things the way they wanted me to do it. And I remembered that I finally got smart and finally said, well, if I'm going to have to play this game with these people, I better learn how to talk to the boss. So what I would do is to say, look, boss, I got a problem. I don't know how to solve this problem. Now, here's the facts as I understand it. This is what I'm trying to do, and it doesn't seem to work. And I need help. Now, I had gotten jobs, and I had asked questions, and I had said, I need help. I remember when I was studying Latin, I had a hell of a time studying Latin. I couldn't understand it, so I'd always have to go down to the teacher and say, look, help me to translate Latin. And he'd say, okay, this is the way you do it, and don't do this, so forth and so on. I said, oh, yeah, fine. That's the way I got help. It's asking for help. So pretty soon I started praying by asking for help from my higher power. I said, I don't know how to do these things. I don't know how to get on. I don't know how to get next to you. I don't know where you are. I don't know how you're down there on where you are, how to get your attention. but I'm going to do everything I can to do, and I think that my desire to try and please you does please you. And I'm trying to do everything I can to try and please you. And I kept doing this, and at that time I was looking for a job, and I was driving out to the valley, and I was driving all over. I even wound up in Riverside on pursuing a job down there, and driving home from Riverside I was praying all the time, please God, don't let me get that job in Riverside. I was scared to death. This guy down there said, you're just the guy I'm looking for. And all of a sudden when he said that, I just shuddered. All up to that time, I was great on going in on job interviews and applications and everything else. But as soon as this guy said, you're just the guy I'm looking for, I said, oh my God, I don't want to move to Riverside. And he says, yeah, I'll move you down here. I'll take care of you. I'll put you into the country club. I'll rent a house for you. I'll pay for all your things to move down here. You're going to be my assistant. And he was the president of the bank down here in Riverside. And I'd gone online and I said, I don't want to go to Riverside. God, I don't want to go to, I didn't want to get out of my cocoon. I didn't want to get out of all the people I was working with. I didn't want to get away from I was beginning to learn this program. And I was going to all these meetings, and I was having these coffee clutches, and I was sharing with my experience, strength, and hope with people. And all these people that were around me that I was working so hard with, I said, I go down to Riverside. I know there's AA in Riverside, but I don't want to leave where I am. And then I thought, well, that's not very good. After all, I had made up my mind that I would accept anything that my higher power had for me. So I said, well, God, I still got to talk this over with you. Frankly, I don't want to, but if you want me to go, I'll go. It's all up to you. I promise you that if you want me to do it, I'll do the best damn job I know how. I know I can help this guy. I know he needs a lot of help, and I know the experience that I've got in the field that I'm in. I know I can help this guy. I can do a lot for him. So I will be willing to do anything you want me to do, regardless of whether I want it or not. That was on Friday afternoon. And he had told me to call me up Monday. And he said, I want you to meet the vice president because I don't want any personality conflict and I want to see how you guys get along together. And I said, okay. So I called up Monday and I said, 10 o'clock like he told me, and I said, I'm here and you want to make an appointment? And he said, gee, I've got bad news for you, Luke. During this weekend, I ran into a young fellow who lives right here in town who's exactly what I'm looking for, and I hired him, and I'm sorry to say that you don't have to come down here anymore. And I looked up there, and I looked up at my higher power, and I said, you know, you got the most fantastic sense of humor I've ever seen in my life. I could just see him up there laughing so hard that his jowls and his belly was just bouncing up and down and just saying, hardy, har, har. I really got him that time, didn't I? I had him so scared that he was going to get that kind of a job. I just wanted to test him to see whether he was really serious, whether he really would do what I wanted him to do. And as long as he was serious, then he didn't have to do it. And this is one of the lessons I learned, because I remember during this time, too, that I said to Howard one time, and I can't understand why I'm trying to get a job. It's just unbelievable because my background and education and everything like that, I know this is, I just can't understand it. And he said, let me ask you a question. He always threw this at me. God, I hate that. Let me ask you a question. He said, would you be willing to wash dishes for a job? And I tell you, I went up in smoke. I couldn't stand it. When I was in Aspen, Colorado, a guy had come to me that owned up a restaurant up there, and he said, Luke, would you help me out? Come over and wash dishes. My dishwasher never showed up, and everything's piling up in the kitchen, and he says, I'm in a hell of a time. Will you come over and help me out? I said, oh, dishwashing is the simplest job in the world, for heaven's sakes. He says, Luke, I can't find anybody. I need you. Please come over and help me. I said, okay, I'll come over. I found out that dishwashing is one of the hardest, toughest jobs there is. Don't ever let anybody tell you it's an easy job, especially when you walk into the kitchen and everything's been stacked up for 2 hours and nothing's been done, and there was a foot in it, and they had a water pipe broken, and there was 6 inches of water in there which you had to slosh around in the water. And I was trying to wash dishes and get this done, so I knew what washing dishes was. I had washed dishes for 5 hours that night. And I learned what dishwashing was the hard way. And now this friend of mine asked me, "Are you kidding?" I thought, now wait a minute. I have to remember, this guy is very sneaky. He's very funny, I've got to remember. Now, I know my interpretation, but what did he actually say? And I unfortunately or fortunately, have always had the ability to remember exact words that people said. That isn't what they always meant, but I could always remember the exact words that they said. And I said, what did he say? He said, "Are you willing to wash dishes for a job?" That's all he asked me. So I went back to him 2 days later and I said, "Howard, I thought very carefully over what you said." I always wanted to be impressed. He was so a wonderful guy. And I said, "Yes, I'm willing to wash dishes for a job." And he said, "Luke, you learned the secret. That's the most important secret that you could ever learn in AA, is the fact that you are willing. That's the key to this whole program. Your spiritual sobriety is in direct proportion to your willingness. That's where the power is." And I was always fighting this word power. I remember reading about and the power to carry it out. And I said, "What's the power? What does the power mean?" I know what power is. The cops always had power with me. My 5 they had power I couldn't believe. And I know other people that had power over me, and I know people that had fantastic power. They could give orders and everything got done. I know I had seen power in a lot of ways. But what did this power mean? And I kept mulling it over and mulling it over. What is power? How do you get power on this program? And that's when it came out. That my power is in direct proportion to my willingness. My willingness to do what I think my higher power wants me to do. I had been out in the valley going on job appointments, and I came back about 4:30 in the afternoon, and I pulled up in front of my apartment, and I'd been praying all the way home. And I had a car at that time that I never knew whether I was going to get from where I was to where I had to go to, because it was always something was happening to me. I tell you, that car was, I knew my higher power was really teaching me patience. Coming home, I had on Highland Avenue at the power peak of traffic, right on Santa Monica Boulevard in Highland, my car coughed out right in the middle of the thing, and it was an old 1955 Cadillac Eldorado that weighed 2-3 tons, and there I was in the middle of the street, and I got out and the car wouldn't start, and I was trying to push the damn thing over the tracks in Santa Monica, and everybody was going around me, and I was frantic because of all the traffic and everybody honking their horns and everything like that. And I kept saying, "Please, God, help me. I don't know how to get this. I would just get the car across the street and out of the way so I can go over to the gas station and get somebody to help me start the car." This old car pulled up behind there, and this colored boy pulled out, and he says, "Hi there, son. You need a little help?" Oh, God. There's an Eskimo. I said, "I sure do. I sure do need help." He said, "Just move over there, buddy, and I'll push you over the side of the street." And he did. I got the car started, and I pulled up in front of my house. And I was praying all the way home. And I said, "Thank you, God, for the Eskimo. I know whatever I'm doing is it must be something right, because I know I'm not getting a job, but I'm doing everything. I hope I'm doing everything I think you want me to do. Going to lots of meetings, having lots of talks, and I knew if I'd gotten a job, I wouldn't spend all the time that I spent my first year." And just as I pulled up in front of my apartment, I had this terrific feeling come over me. It was like somebody took a bathtub of water, warm, tepid water, and just poured it all over me. And I had the damnedest feeling I've ever had in my life. It was just unbelievable. It just rocked me. It was so peaceful. It was so calm. All of a sudden, all my anxiety just disappeared. I felt at one within myself. I felt so peaceful I almost got lightheaded about the whole thing. And the answer I got from my higher power was, everything is going to be all right. You don't have to worry anymore. When the time is right, everything's going to happen. Maybe not the way you want it to, but it will happen. So stop worrying about the results. Everything's going to be all right. It was the most powerful feeling I've ever had in my life. I just sat there stunned. In my car, I must have sat there 5 minutes. I said, now I know what they're talking about, is getting in touch with your higher power. I went to work very hard to fill up my spiritual sobriety because I looked at the guys in the program who were always smiling. And God love him, there was one guy called Cecil, and every time I walked into the Beverly Hills Stag, he had the most beautiful smile on his face I ever saw. And I'd say, hey Cecil, how are things going with you? And he'd smile and he'd say, look, they're beautiful. And I'd say, well, how's your job going? And he said, that stinks. I said, how are all your financial problems? He said, they're chaotic. I said, how's your relationship with the opposite sex coming along? He said, they're absolutely unbelievable. I said, well, how's everything going with you? And he says, look, that's beautiful. And I said, God, how does he do this? I can't believe that this guy can sit there and met all these things going around him, and he's got this beautiful smile. And it was a smile from within, because when you looked at him, anybody looked at him, you could see that smile came from within. It was a beautiful smile. And I'll never forget, he called me up one night and he said, look, I don't feel right. He said, you know, I got a pain in my arm and down through my shoulder. And I said, oh my God, Cecil. I said, have you been to see your doctor? He said, it's only a pain in my arm. I said, my God, that's the way a heart attack starts. Oh, he says, you're kidding, Luke. I said, no, I'm not kidding at all. I said, you get hold of your doctor right away. I said, that's the way those things start. Now, I don't know where that came from. I'm no doctor. I don't remember ever hearing anybody ever say to me that that's where way heart attacks start. But I heard myself saying all these things to Cecil. And he said, well, maybe I should go to the doctor. But he didn't, and he was dead 3 days later. But I never forgot Cecil, because I remember that beautiful smile, and I thought, if I can have that feeling, if I can have that smile, or if I can only have 1/10 of that smile, I'll be the most grateful person in the world. And I found out you can't have those things either unless you work at them. It has to be an inside job. So I started to work. I read everything I could on spiritual sobriety, and I don't know whether I got anything out of it or not. I remembered at the time in my search, when I was on the path seeking, what they call, the seeking path, the 1, 2, and 3, that God could and would if he were sought. It's the seeking that's the most important thing. Whether you would know where to go, I'm never going to find it, because if I found it, that would be something that nobody else has ever done, so I know I'm not going to find it, but it's the seeking. And my higher power wants to see how good a seeker I am. How hard am I really trying to seek? And so I got carried into all sorts of different paths. I read books about anything and everything I could get my hands on. And I don't ever remember what they all were. All I remember was I kept saying, if I turn the page, there will be the answer. And I turned the page and there wasn't any answer. And I don't even know what the question was. Now, how about that? I'm looking for the answer and I don't even know what the question is. And so I kept turning the page of all the books I was reading, and I got into everything. All the way down the line, and I never could find it. And all of a sudden I was reading a book isn't this interesting? Our secretary that I was, Aloha, you know. I was reading a book by this man, Max Freedom Long, who had been a school teacher over in Hawaii back in the early 1900s. And he had started to study what they call the mystics at that time were called kahunas. And they were, a kahuna is a secret and a kahuna is a keeper of the secret. And he had gone to the Bishop Museum there in Hawaii and studied with this guy who was head of there because he could tell him these fantastic tales about these kahunas. And he was interested in finding out what this ability they had of getting in touch through their prayer of controlling events and people and unbelievable psychological events. And so I had been reading through somebody recommended all about this thing, and I turned the page and there was the answer. Now I don't know what the answer was, but all of a sudden I said, oh my God, that's the answer. That's what I've been searching for all my life. What's the answer? And I had this feeling that somebody poured another bucket of water all over me. Phew, you know. Wow, that's fantastic. And all of a sudden again, I got this feeling that within me, everything came together. And I realized that when that happened, I had always had this conflict within me of the good guy and the bad guy. I knew how to be a good guy, but I didn't like a good guy. I couldn't stand good guys. I grew up with good guys around me. All the guys in my group that were growing up were nice boys, and I couldn't stand that expression, being a nice boy. Oh, it would just turn me livid. I couldn't stand it. I would go to any lengths not to be called a nice boy. I couldn't stand it. That was one of those panty waists, you know, that were in the group that was always doing what he was supposed to do, and I couldn't stand any of the guys in the group that were like that. I would go anywhere to get out of those groups. I'd go down to the hooligans. I'd go anywhere to get away from those kind of people because I could not stand being, I know how to be a nice guy, but I didn't want to be. I wanted to be a bad guy. There's a lot more fun being a bad guy than it was being a good guy. I had a lot more fun. I did anyway. I had a lot of fun. I was the kind of a kid that was poking leaves behind the garage when I was 7 years old. You know, that's a pretty good start. Did get smoking. I was the kind of a guy that was always stealing my father's wine, taking the door off of the hinges, and he couldn't figure out how he kept it locked all the time, how the goddamn wine was disappearing. And I was taking the hinges. He never dreamed that I knew how to take the hinges off the door and take the door off and go in there and steal the wine, you know. And he couldn't understand a lot of things that were going on because he said I locked it up so very carefully. How in the hell is it disappearing? And I was cunning, baffling, and powerful because not that I wanted to drink the wine. It was the challenge of being able to do something that was being a bad guy. I was the kind of a guy that when I was a kid was playing knights, you know, like you play when kids play knights, you know, with the garbage covers, you know, as shields and those goddamn clothesline poles and galloping around the backyard, you know, playing knights. And I tell you, I was not Galahad. He was the good guy. I was Lancelot, the bad guy who was always running off with the broads all the time. You know? Couldn't stand being a good. But when I got this feeling, and that was the good guy, the bad guy, always clashing, always fighting, always. And when I would get in trouble, then I had to become a good guy in order to get out of trouble. All of a sudden, when I had that feeling, it was the good guy and the bad guy coming together as one person. And I felt, my God, that's what they're talking about, is being one within yourself. One within yourself. That I have no more conflict within me anymore. I am not fighting me anymore. I am accepting me as I am. Both the good and the bad, whatever it is, I'm accepting me. And that is very important. Since that time, I got very deep into spirituality, and I went along, and my spirituality got so high that I was getting in touch with a lot of things that when I look back on it, I was on the path and seeking. And for those of you who are, it's a fantastic role. It's an unbelievable experience. It's one of the happiest things I ever had in my life because I knew I was doing what my higher power wanted. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't know what was going to happen to me. But I knew that whatever it was what he wanted. And so I was having experiences like not going to meetings and saying I'm not going to go to that meeting tonight, and all of a sudden I'm getting the word go to the meeting. And I'm thinking, oh, come on, now I really don't want to go to that meeting. Go to the meeting. I don't want to go to that meeting. And I argue with my higher power. Unfortunately, I always lose, but I argue with him. And that's my nature, I guess. And he said, go to the meeting. So I said, all right, I'll go to the meeting. And so I was over at the motion picture group at the Plummer Park, and I drove in there around 8:15. And I said, this is the most ridiculous and asinine, stupid thing I've ever done in my life. What's happening to me? I am ready for Camarilla because I am now listening to my higher power, and who in the hell will ever believe that that's what I'm doing? And I got the word, when you walk in the place, you'll know why you're there. And I walked in the place, and there was one of my babies standing there, and he's about 6'5", and he towers over everybody. And he was facing the door, and he says, my God, Luke, where have you been? I've been looking everywhere for you. And I got the message from my higher power. He said, this is what you're here for. I said, whoa, well, thank you very much. I knew why I was there, and there was a reason. I'd known since that time. I still fight him. Sometimes I am uncontrollable. I know sometimes he laughs at me because I won't do some of the things I know to do. I know that he has to keep nudging me every once in a while in order to get me to do the things I'm supposed to do. But I also know that my desire to please him does please him. And I hope I have that desire in everything I do. When I was coming down here tonight, I was thinking, what can I say tonight to people that live in Palm Springs? Because I think most of the people down here in the Springs and around through here are very spiritual people. And I said, I don't know whether I could tell them anything that they don't already know. The only thing I can do is share with them my experience, strength, and hope. And the fact that when I go home tonight, and I thank my higher power for my sobriety, and I thank him for the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I thank him for all the things he's given me and all the things he's taken away and all the things he's left me. And I thank him, and I also hope that I've been able to do some of the things he wanted me to do that day. And I know he's going to tell me that what he wanted me to do was to come down here and share my experience, strength, and hope with you. Thank you.
Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with. And it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone, through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst, then one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, oop, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right. But I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.